King Kong, kanskje. Vi kan skremme den med våpen nok. Den er lovlig.
At the start of the movie, a father-daughter duo climbs up the Troll Hills in western Norway as a hobby. After they reach the top, the father, Tobias, tells his young daughter, Nora, about the folklore of legendary trolls. These mythical creatures, they say, wandered the earth several thousand years ago, but one day they were cast into stones when they came into contact with sunlight. Tobias, a renowned folklorist, believes that trolls still wander the mountains of Norway, and Nora is fascinated by it. Fast forward 20 years, and Nora has outgrown her belief in magic. She's turned to science, now working as a paleontologist focused on fossils and the past. After working for almost 6 months at an archaeological site, she finally discovers a mysterious fossil. Elated, she celebrates with her team. This discovery is huge, but meanwhile, in the nearby Dovre Mountains, construction for a new metro station is underway. The workers drill and set up explosives, ignoring protests from activists who shout that the mountain should be left untouched. The chief ignores them, setting off the explosives with no hesitation. But then, the mountain erupts, and out of nowhere, an ancient mythical creature rises from the depths of the mountain. Workers flee in terror as the ground shakes, but falling debris seals their fate. Horrified, the world watches as the news reaches the Norwegian Armed Forces headquarters in Oslo. The general decides to send an aircraft to capture clear images of what happened. He immediately alerts the Prime Minister, who rushes to the military base where they're briefed on the situation. Over 50 lives have been lost. The Minister of Defense presents photos of the destruction with massive holes in the ground. Meanwhile, Nora is still celebrating her discovery with her colleagues. She's giving a speech when suddenly a military helicopter lands and a soldier steps out, informing her that the Prime Minister has summoned her to Oslo. Without hesitation, she boards the chopper and heads to the military base. Once there, she's escorted by Andreas to a room filled with government officials. As they discuss the devastation, they suspect it was caused by some kind of gas. But Nora, no longer believing in the simplest explanation, examines a footprint image closely. Could it be a prehistoric animal, risen from the mountain's depths? Her colleagues laugh, mocking her, dismissing her theory as nonsense. This isn't one of your fossil research cases, they say. They also rule out the possibility of an animal being behind all this. But then, Sigrid, a computer genius working for the Norwegian Armed Forces, bursts into the room. She's holding a tablet, breathless but determined, and announces that she managed to retrieve a video from the incident. All eyes are on her as she hits play. On the screen they see it, a 150-foot-tall figure emerging from the Dovre cave, massive and terrifying. The room falls silent, and the realization dawns on them. It's not just destruction, it's a monster. Meanwhile, in a quiet countryside, an elderly couple is enjoying their afternoon tea. Suddenly, they hear a distant roar, low and rumbling. The ground begins to tremble, and their table shakes violently, throwing utensils crashing to the floor. Frantic, they scramble to their safety vault, holding each other tight as the world seems to collapse around them. When it finally stops, they emerge, only to find their home reduced to rubble. The horror on their faces says it all. Back at headquarters, Nora steps forward, her voice steady yet resolute. She tells the Prime Minister she's ready to investigate the Dovre incident. The officials exchange glances, nodding in agreement. Nora is officially assigned as a scientific advisor. After the meeting, Andreas, the PM's advisor, briefs her about the countryside destruction. Without wasting a second, they board a chopper to the site. During the flight, the tension eases just a little as Andreas introduces himself properly, his tone casual but curious. He asks Nora why she chose paleontology. She smiles faintly, explaining how she's always loved nature, a passion kindled by her father, Tobias. But her expression darkens as she reveals how Tobias, once a respected folklore expert, fell too deeply into his beliefs. It drove him to the brink of madness, eventually leading to hospitalization. Andreas listens quietly, then admits he once dreamt of being a writer. There's a moment of shared vulnerability before the chopper lands. When they arrive, they're stunned by the destruction. Houses obliterated, trees uprooted, debris everywhere. Captain Chris Holm, from Special Operations Command, greets them and begins the debrief. The creature moved 2 miles south into the mountains. They swept the area thoroughly, but it's as if the beast vanished into thin air. The trio interviews the elderly couple, who are still visibly shaken. The wife shares what she heard, a haunting howling sound that sent chills down her spine, but she didn't see anything. It's frustratingly inconclusive. Determined, Nora steps away to inspect the area herself. She follows a strange, pungent odor and finds one of the massive footprints left behind by the creature. Inside the footprint, she searches for biological evidence but finds nothing. No hairs, no tissue, nothing. Could this creature be something beyond a living organism? Desperate for answers, Nora makes a bold decision. She decides to seek out her estranged father, Tobias, who lives in isolation in the mountains. With Captain Chris and Andreas by her side, they fly to his remote home. As they land, the tension is palpable. Tobias's first reaction is hostile, but eventually he softens, recognizing his daughter. He invites them inside, and to their surprise, his home is filled with research, papers, drawings, and books about trolls. Even after all these years, Tobias hasn't given up his obsession with the mythical creatures. After a while, the group shows Tobias the video that Sigrid retrieved earlier. His eyes widen as he watches, his breath quickening, and then he murmurs, "They are here." Nora, confused and frustrated, steps forward. She doesn't want cryptic murmurs or folklore. She wants answers, scientific, concrete, and actionable. But Tobias doesn't waver, his voice heavy with emotion, that the trolls went extinct because of the Christianization of Norway. He adds bitterly that he had been close to revealing the truth, but people ridiculed him. Suddenly, Tobias grabs his bag. "We're going on an adventure," he says firmly. Next, we see Nora, her colleagues, and Tobias flying in a chopper. When they land, Tobias eagerly steps out, scanning the surroundings. His face twists in disbelief as he notices the topography has completely changed. Meanwhile, Nora catches a familiar sharp scent in the air, that strange odor she calls hypernature. She follows it cautiously, and then, without warning, it happens. A colossal figure begins to stir behind her. Camouflaged with the surroundings, the mammoth troll rises, its sheer size breathtaking and terrifying. Andreas and the others see it too, and yell for the chopper to take off. And just as the troll lurches toward them, the group narrowly escapes. Once they reach a safe location, they waste no time. Tobias insists they go live, broadcasting the video to government officials in Oslo. The truth is out now, there's no denying it. Trolls are real. The Prime Minister acts quickly, arranging a massive military operation. Soon, hundreds of soldiers gather with the best artillery Norway has to offer, preparing to face the giant. As the preparations unfold, Tobias and Nora share a quiet moment. For the first time in years, they truly talk. There's pain, regret, and love in their words as they finally begin to bridge the chasm between them. It's a heart-wrenching father-daughter moment, fleeting but powerful. Then the troll arrives. The soldiers open fire, their weapons roaring to life. The giant creature roars back, a sound that shakes the earth itself. But to their horror, their attacks barely make a dent. The troll regenerates quickly, and its sense of smell leads it directly to its prey. It kills one soldier effortlessly. Then, amidst the panic and screaming, Tobias steps forward, his arms outstretched in a gesture of peace. For a moment, it seems to work. But then, a military vehicle arrives, guns blazing. It retaliates, turning and crushing the vehicle with a devastating blow. In the chaos, the troll's tail swings violently and strikes Tobias. The force sends him flying, and he crashes hard to the ground. Nora rushes to her father's side, her heart breaking as she sees him struggling to speak. He tries to say something, but before he can finish, he passes away. Nora's cry echoes through the battlefield. That night, Nora sits alone, her father's journal clutched in her hands. She flips through page after page, desperately trying to find something, anything, that can help her understand the troll. Hours pass, and finally, she stumbles upon a peculiar entry. It says the trolls hated the sound of church bells, so much so that they used to throw boulders at churches to silence them. Nora's eyes widen. It's not just folklore, it's a strategy. She shares her discovery with the officials the next morning. Her voice is filled with urgency as she explains that they have to think outside the box. But with no other options on the table, the general and prime minister reluctantly give her the green light. Soon, the plan is in motion. 4 massive military helicopters, each carrying a giant church bell, take off and head toward the troll. At first, it works. The troll stumbles, visibly weakened, but the success is short-lived. The troll lets out a furious roar and begins thrashing. In a matter of minutes, it destroys most of the choppers, leaving a trail of destruction and loss. Amid the chaos, the troll does something unexpected. It saves a child trapped under debris. The creature isn't just a monster, it has emotions. Meanwhile, the world watches in horror. News outlets across the globe broadcast the events, painting a grim picture of the situation in Norway. The Prime Minister addresses the nation on live television. Her voice is solemn as she apologizes for her cabinet's failures and announces a state of emergency. She urges residents of Oslo and surrounding areas to evacuate immediately. The troll is headed straight for the city. Back at the headquarters, Nora is devastated, and now she's been removed from the decision-making table. Andreas, disillusioned by the government's plans to bomb Oslo as a last resort, resigns from his position. Together, he and Nora leave the base, blending into the throngs of people fleeing the city. As they sit in the car, surrounded by chaos, Nora stares out the window, consumed by guilt and frustration. But then something catches her eye in her father's journal. A word, sinding. It's written multiple times, standing out against the pages. Nora gasps and turns to Andreas, who explains that Sinding is a prince living in Oslo's royal palace, one of the wealthiest and most influential men in the country. Determined, Nora insists they turn the car around. There's something they need to uncover at the palace. They arrive shortly after and are met by Rikard Sinding himself. He seems to be expecting them. Without hesitation, he leads them inside and reveals the truth that has been hidden for centuries. Tobias was right all along. Trolls once roamed the lands of Norway, but the government, desperate to protect its secrets, destroyed anyone who came too close to the truth. Sinding admits, without remorse, that he was the one who orchestrated Tobias's downfall. When her father's research became too dangerous, Sinding had him committed to a mental institution, ensuring the secret would remain buried. Nora stands there in shock, the weight of the revelation crashing down on her. Everything her father fought for, everything he sacrificed, was for the truth. And that secret happens to be the skeletal remains of a troll family underground. The royal palace was built on top of the Troll King's cave after the Christians massacred his family and left him for dead inside the mountain. Here, we discover that the troll wreaking havoc around the country is actually the Troll King himself. This explains why the giant is heading to Oslo. He's trying to return home. Sinding reveals that nothing is more important to trolls than family. During the Christianization of Norway, the Troll King was lured to Dovre mountain and imprisoned. The explosives detonated earlier set him free, and now he's heading back to Oslo, desperate to reunite with his children. Nora and Andreas are horrified by this revelation, even more so when they see the skeletal remains of the troll family. When Nora shines her UV light on the bones, they sizzle. She realizes trolls are highly sensitive to light and immediately comes up with a plan. She asks Sinding for the largest vehicle he has, and he offers the Queen's favorite pickup truck. Nora then phones Captain Chris and briefs him about her plan to surround the Troll King with tanning beds and expose him to UV lights. Chris gathers soldiers to create the trap, while Andreas contacts Sigrid, asking her to delay the missile strike on Oslo. Sigrid, ever the hacking genius, successfully halts the missile launch, buying precious time. Meanwhile, Nora and Andreas get to work. They uncover a troll child skull from the truck bed and use it to lure the giant towards the trap. As the troll approaches, he inadvertently smashes the skull and realizes his family is gone forever. Overcome with rage, he turns his fury toward Nora and Andreas. Elsewhere, at the military base, Sigrid is caught tampering with the missile system. But just as things escalate, the general orders the missile plan to be aborted, confirming civilians are still in the area. Nora and Andreas manage to guide the Troll King to the designated spot. Military vehicles surround him, and massive UV lights shine onto his enormous body. Slowly, the troll begins to burn. The plan is working, but as Nora watches the creature suffer, she has a sudden change of heart. She turns off the lights and begs the troll to return to the mountains to find safety. But it's too late. The sun begins to rise, its rays piercing through the sky. The Troll King stands motionless for a moment, then collapses, his body turning to stone. Just before he's completely gone, Nora reaches out and touches him, a small gesture of empathy for a creature that only wanted to return to his family. While the rest of the world rejoices, Nora and Andreas quietly wonder if other trolls might still be hidden deep within Norway's mountains. Their thoughts are interrupted when the Prime Minister appears, thanking Nora for her efforts to save the country. In the final scene, the movie cuts to Dovre Mountain. The ground rumbles as a heap of stones begins to shift. Suddenly, another troll rises from the rubble, its massive form towering against the horizon, ready to unleash chaos on Norway once more. And with that, this story ends here. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel.